So very briefly, I know we don't have a lot of time. I'm just going to present kind of the generalities for Cali and Valle del Cauca, especially for the BPO KPO sector. We are the third largest region in Colombia after Bogota and after Medellin. Cali is the third main city. Very well. So just an overview of what we do as Invest Pacific. Well, you heard from ProColombia, you heard from Invest in Bogota. Now this is Invest Pacific, and you will find that in Colombia, there's kind of this institutional ecosystem that will, support the business people, the companies that are interested in Colombia that are coming in. We do it through the national government with ProColombia. We do it with private partners like Xstrategy Center. And again, more regionally, we have these investment promotion agencies. We are the investment promotion agency for Cali and Valle del Cauca. We are a nonprofit organization. We do not charge for our services. And I am the investment manager for the services sector. So anything related to BPO, contact centers, back offices, shared services centers, and tech operations, then we, tend to those opportunities and we give them all the information. We prepare the agenda. So hopefully we'll have you guys here as well, and we'll be able to kind of provide these landing services for you too. Now getting a little bit, let me try to move this a bit. There we go. Perfect. Now talking about Cali and Valle del Cauca, again, it is the third largest region. I do not only want to pitch in for Cali because one of the interesting competitive advantages of our region is that we have a network of cities between 100,000 and 400,000 inhabitants that are very close to the capital city of the region, which is Cali. And we also source human talent from those cities, especially for the BPO. This makes a lot of sense because we've worked with companies that want to hire talent in, for example, cities like Palmira, Buenaventura, Jumbo, Jamundí. We work directly with the mayor's office from those cities. We map out the talent and we're able to source talent not only from Cali, but again, from these surrounding cities that also have bilingual talent. Now, giving you more general context of our region, it is very important for the Colombian economy. We account for 10% of the national GDP. We account for 16% of the national industry, 22% of the national agro industry. So we are an agro industry powerhouse as well. We also account for practically half of the national trade that goes through the Buenaventura port. And in terms of population, just Cali and the metropolitan area is around 3.1 million people, and Valle del Cauca is a region around 4.5 million. So this is also comparable to countries like Costa Rica, Uruguay. As mentioned before, again, Colombia is a big country. It has strong regions, a very strong capital as well. So you'll be able to come to Colombia and explore different regions. I think every region and city has their own very interesting proposition of value. But again, as you grow in one or the other city, you can expand to other regions that are also strong and very competitive, such as Cali, Bogota, Medellin, the coast, etc. We have more than 200 multinationals already established in Cali and Valle del Cauca from different geographies, from different sectors. We're going to take a look at the players for the BPO sector further down the presentation, but this to show that this is an already internationalized region in the country. Actually, it was one of the first, if not the first region to start landing multinational companies, very recognized multinational companies from the 1950s, 1960s. Now, what are the main competitive advantages of Cali for the BPO sector? First, the competitive costs. We are between, and I'm going to mention that later on as well, between 20 and 15% more competitive for BPO salaries as compared to other main cities. We still have the human talent. I think, again, being the third largest city in Colombia, we came a little bit late to the BPO party. I think other cities cashed in. They were able to, land very interesting players. But Cali has been catching up. Cali has been landing some very interesting BPO players, but it's still not as saturated as other main cities that started earlier off and, were able to kind of land very interesting companies, but at this point in time, they're a little bit saturated because of high competition. We have the infrastructure, the connectivity of a main city. Actually, we have the second fastest upstream internet in the country. the business network that I was talking about, not only the internationals, but also very strong local players as well, not necessarily for the BPO sector, or yes, for the BPO sector, but for Spanish operations, and a city that offers also quality of life for the talent. So just to touch on some of these kind of points, as I was mentioning, the young population in Cali, more than 3 million people, the saturation rates, we're updating this information, but we still have a lower saturation rates than the national average and then the average of other main cities in Colombia. And that also, and actually this, for 2022 numbers, this is actually an interesting difference. And if you guys come here, or we're going to send Xstrategy Center the updated version of the information that we're just finishing up, it's actually a 4 percentage point difference, the attrition rate of the national average compared to Cali. So we not only have a lower saturation rate than other main cities in the country, we also have lower attrition rates than other main cities in Colombia. And that connects with the low saturation. If you have a low saturation, fewer number of competitors while competing for the same talent, that talent is not going to rotate as much. And this is what's happened in Cali. Of course, it's going to be changing as more players come in, as competition, gets a little bit hotter, but we're still at a very interesting point. We like to call ourselves like this hidden gem in Colombia, a main city with all the competitive advantages, but again, lower levels of saturation than other main cities that have consolidated their BPO sectors a little bit earlier. In terms of the salaries, as I was mentioning, I'm going to give you the updated version with the 2022 salary rates. But here, 2 important points. The first one, again, you'll find in Cali for the BPO salaries a competitive advantage between 10% and 15%. More obvious in the higher and more supervisory leadership roles. For the agents, because of remote hiring, the salaries are very comparable among the capital cities. But again, for more higher up positions, you're going to see that difference and competitiveness in salaries is going to be more stark in Cali, in favor of Cali versus other main cities. And Cali is also a low-cost city compared to the other 2 main cities, Bogota and Medellin. That will not only impact the cost structure of the operation, that will also positively impact the salaries of the employees, which will have more spending power in a city like Cali for a very similar salary that they would get in Bogota or in Medellin. In terms of, kind of the university network where the bilingual talent is coming from, and some interesting numbers regarding the talent, we have a very strong university ecosystem, more than 18 universities. We've been growing our talent pool of graduates in recent years. So it is expanding. We're still not a bilingual city, but the talent pool has expanded. We're now seeing that in terms of the undergraduates, 1 out of every 5 graduate is graduating with a competitive bilingual level. That is a little bit similar to the high school graduates as well. We also have a network of English institutes in the city that we work with, again, to kind of access that bilingual talent. And this is an area of support that we have kind of specialized in. We know that the talent is the key factor for the BPO operations. And we try to connect the landing BPOs with the ecosystem, with the training routes that I'm going to show next, so they can access that bilingual talent. Cali and Valle del Cauca currently have different training programs that are training people on bilingual skills, especially for the BPO sector. These are all, as we call them, training programs or routes for employment in the BPO sector. So we, again, connect the companies with these training programs. They're there from point zero. They're calibrating the training. They're giving feedback to the students, or giving feedback to the entities that are training the people. So, they're very well aligned to what the sector needs. So I think even though we were a little bit late to the party, we're catching up strong and quick. And I think we are one of the only cities with around 5-6 active training programs of deployment directed for the BPO sector. These are some of the players, and with this, I start to wrap up because I know we have limited time. The 5 top international English operations for BPO that we have here, more specifically contact centers, are Tascas, Alorica, Axito, Sitel, and Teleperformance. Between these 5 players, we estimate around 4,700 bilingual agents currently working for these operations. So, that's an interesting kind of headcount for the bilingual agents that are currently working from Bali and Valle del Cauca. We have other BPO operations, not necessarily contact centers, but, kind of business process outsourcing on other areas. We also have some Spanish operations for BPO and contact centers and some local players, but that do not have English capacity. So really the competition would be at least for bilingual talent, would be among these top 5 players that are in the city. They have been able to, some of them are very successful cases that have been able to grow a 1,000 headcount operation, bilingual operation in a year's time. So I can tell you everything about the city, but at the end is going to be about the success cases, the companies that already made it here. They have been able to grow and consolidate their plans in a very reasonable timetable. We have very interesting office spaces. We have the only free trade zone in Colombia, exclusive for services operations. We also have availability of co-working spaces and very horizontal spaces that we know work for BPO operations. Is a very competitive price per square meter on average. That's even lower than this because with updated numbers and the current value of the peso versus the dollar, it stands at around $10 per square meter on average. If you're going to land in a free trade zone like Zona America, which is, the top space in the city, the most expensive square meter, you would be looking into around $16 per square meter cold shell. And for co-working spaces, but that's not very, interesting for the BPOs that are looking for more, kind of 500 and up operations for bilingual agents. This is kind of, again, I want to say so many more things, but I know I only had 10 minutes. So this is kind of I guess, an opener to catch the attention, and hopefully, guys, that we'll see you here, that we'll be able to host you, expand on this information, and for you guys to have a firsthand experience of the ecosystem for BPO and customer service operations here in our region.